Dennis Cox and Chris Lea about to dig in the crate, so turn it up, cause it's time for the culture state. Yeah, we do it for the culture, home of the greats, in the Carolina hood from the culture state. Chris Lea and Dennis Cox about to dig in the crate, so turn it up, cause it's time for the culture state. Yeah.
Dennis, do you remember November? We are here already.
It's wild. Wild to think about. We made it this far.
It's crazy.
Let's go.
10 months into 2022. Feels like 2022 just started maybe like 2 months ago. But, you know, it started 10 months ago, and 2 months from now, it'll be 2023.
It's crazy to think about. I feel like I was just recently at the ACC basketball tournament in Brooklyn or something along those lines. It feels like, oh, yeah, it was just yesterday. No, that was back in March.
Yeah. Crazy times, man. But welcome to Culture State. We thank you guys for watching, listening, however you're consuming us. We appreciate the consumption, whether it's on WRL Sports Plus, on any place that you get your podcast or YouTube. We're here for you to talk about what's happening in the state of North Carolina. And one of the things that's happening in the state of North Carolina, like Dennis, it's interesting because when Matt Rhule was the head coach of the Carolina Panthers, when the Panthers lost, it felt like
we had to check
a slow death every time.
Yes.
Like something was being taken from you every time. And this past Sunday, the Panthers lost a really heartbreaking, heart-wrenching loss, right?
Yeah.
But somehow or another in that loss, it made you feel better about the team in the future.
Yeah.
And so it's amazing the complete difference that Steve Wilkes has brought to that team.
Oh, he brought competence. Then let's be real. Like he brought someone that actually he brings an element of like like someone who actually knows how to plan for the NFL.
Yeah.
Matt Rhule, college, successful, right? For the levels that he coached at, success.
Yeah.
NFL's a different game. How you prepare, all that stuff, it's completely different. And Wilkes shows or has shown, with the exception of that first game after replacing Matt Rhule, like, hey, we have a game plan. Like this is actually how we prepare, how we practice, and all these things. It's showing on the field. Now we're not there in the meeting rooms and stuff like that all day, but it's showing on the field on Sundays. It looks like a completely different team using the exact same guys. Imagine that.
Or even using guys that they weren't using before. But really quick, before I go to that, I just want to bring up something that you just said. You said, you know, the first game against the Rams wasn't that good. Steve Wilkes did not leave the Sunday before that Rams game thinking he'd be the head coach for the Rams week. And he found that out Monday. And so in 6 days, you got to be prepared to coach your first NFL game for the Carolina Panthers as an interim head coach. Matt Rhule.
I'll give a pass. I'll give a pass on that first game.
Yeah, of course. But even with what he's doing these last two games, Matt Rhule had literally an entire offseason when the Carolina Panthers were done back last January, this past January, leading up to free agency, NFL draft, rookie minicamp, OTAs, training camp, and still on his third year couldn't really get things done. And part of it was, he just wasn't using people correctly. A lot of times you'll have like these great tools in your toolbox and they look nice, they're shiny, they're pretty cool. Yeah. And I kept saying this to you also, Dennis, like on paper, I felt like the Carolina Panthers had a pretty good roster.
Yeah.
But with Matt Rhule, that roster wasn't being used to its best ability. Even Ben McAdoo seems like he's a better play caller now that Matt Rhule isn't there. This is showing a lot of how he was really holding the team back. And the examples I think of would be Deontay Foreman. You sign him, obviously, because you want to make sure that Christian McCaffrey, isn't injured. You go into the season thinking Christian McCaffrey is going to be with you for the entire season, right?
Yeah.
Deontay Foreman, one of the amazing college football players when he came out, also last year getting another opportunity in the NFL. When Derrick Henry goes down, for the Titans, it didn't seem like there was any drop-off. And that's Derrick Henry. Deontay Foreman came in and literally gave them no drop-off. And so you get a chance to have this guy on a one-year contract for dirt cheap, and you barely use him. Terrace Marshall Jr., a part of that national championship with LSU, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, and he was one of those guys making plays for LSU, showed that he could be a great receiver. He was benched, healthy scratch earlier in the season.
I'll give a pass on that because he was nicked up during training camp and stuff, so he probably didn't get a lot of the reps and things along. So I'll give somewhat of a pass on Terrace Marshall.
We could talk about that. Yeah. And then it seems like besides Teddy Bridgewater in 2020, the best quarterback that's been on the roster for the Carolina Panthers this entire time has been P.J. Walker.
Yeah.
You know, before this year, P.J. Walker had one game that he started last year against the Arizona Cardinals. One game he started in 2020 against the Detroit Lions. He was 2-0. But what the whole thing that came out of those was, he's a little reckless. He throws interceptions. And now you're seeing somebody who's getting number one reps in practice, being able to play games with those number one reps, and now coming into his own, showing that he can handle certain things and handle the pressure. At the end of the game, not, panicking, but throwing a bomb to DJ Moore. He was standing on a 35-yard line and hit DJ Moore 2 yards into the end zone.
Yeah, I know.
Like on a rope. Like, my man has an arm, and he showed he's probably the best quarterback. He's been the best quarterback on the roster this entire time besides 2020 with Teddy Bridgewater.
You know, the wild thing is if Matt Corral hadn't gotten hurt in the preseason,
P.J.
Walker wouldn't even be on the team. That's the thing. Now again, you mentioned just only played in a couple games over the last couple seasons, played with 3 straight games so far this year. So it's a very, very small sample size. Is it sustainable long term? That's a totally different discussion.
He's not the long-term fix.
Yeah. But he's proven that he belongs in the league.
Yes.
Probably as a backup quarterback, but like you said, he's probably the best quarterback on the roster. It wasn't even supposed to be here,
right.
Which is actually probably the more wild thing to think about is that the guy, like you mentioned, the best on the roster, if Matt Corral wasn't hurt, would be somewhere else, like someone else's practice squad or someone else's backup right now. That's where he'd be. Or who knows if
Panthers practice squad.
If that, I don't know, because you're probably only going to you're not going to try to keep a fourth quarterback on a roster, but who knows?
He'll be on the practice squad like they have Jacob Eason right now. So
yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think about. But you never know. He could have got picked up by someone else as my light goes out. See, there's Matt Rhule just putting the lights out on us again. I've clearly have a problem with this light. It always goes out every single episode, I feel like. But still, there's these guys on the roster that probably haven't been used properly because, again, it's all about the preparation and management going into it. And I feel like maybe Matt could do there are things that he wanted to do or things that he would like to do in terms of the running game and such. And then, the offensive line's really coming together. But it's amazing how sometimes it's the addition by subtraction sometimes because you take away this one person in terms of Matt Rhule and it's unlocking so many other things that people are doing. It's not that they needed to add more pieces to get to where they wanted to be. You just had to really take away one guy.
Yeah.
That's really it.
The head coach. And if you notice too, Panthers' social media has even been better since he left because apparently he had a little bit of control over that.
Oh, no. He tried to fully control it. No, that's the thing. He tried to fully control. Like, he went full-on college football coach. And it's like, hey, our social media message and stuff got to be this blah, blah, blah. Like, dude, you ain't recruiting.
Right.
Come on now. Like, you're not going into some 3-stars living room being like, hey, you can play for us. At the end of the day, you can be a great Bear. Yeah, that's what we are here at Baylor. Like, that's not what you're doing. Hey, not going to some free agent's living room, but at the end of the day, here's the Panther way. You can be one of us. That's not what you're doing. So I mean, that's the thing. Like the priorities were wrong.
Consistent like Pepsi.
Exactly. You want to be like Pepsi. Pepsi's like Pepsi 24/7. At the end of the day, are you one of us? Here's a contract. There are actually a lot of conversations and reports that were coming out about how he tried to have a lot of input on the social media. And things along those lines, try to really control that. He was actually the one, apparently, that Scott Fitterer had to take a back seat on in terms of picking the roster and those kinds of things. So I think that's something that you're going to see even this upcoming offseason, depending on who the head coach is and if Scott Fitterer is still around, about how the roster is going to reshape with the draft and this thing. So there's a lot of still questions and what ifs moving forward. But yeah, the removal of one guy, it's amazing how things all of a sudden get better.
I think this is highly unlikely, but it'll be very interesting to see where the Panthers are next year if Steve Wilks is made to be the actual head coach of the Carolina Panthers. Give him an entire offseason with this exact same roster. Of course, there's going to be changes because of free agency and things like that. But also give him a draft. Now you have 7 picks in the 2023 draft. And the coaching that he's going to have for these guys, it just feels like overall, I will say this. Under Matt Rhule, I felt like the team wasn't a highly penalized team. So they paid attention to those details. It wasn't like they were a horrible team under Matt Rhule as far as what's on paper, but it was just the product on the field, the situational, handling of the game. And with 3 games into Steve Wilks' tenure here, I would like to see what's going to go on when he has a full offseason to prepare for a 17-game season, and just to see. And maybe it's just another 1-year flyer like he had at Arizona. I mean, I don't know how smart that would actually be. But it'll be cool just to see what the difference is. And because just in 3 games, we've seen a huge difference. And my man hasn't had an offseason to really implement his stuff, to put in his people for everything that he wants to put them in for. So, again, the Panthers' offense the last few weeks, I would say, the last 2 weeks, besides the Rams game, it's just getting better and better under Steve Wilks, a defensive coach, right? Yeah. Matt Rhule supposedly an offensive coach, but the offense is getting better under Steve Wilks, and it's just interesting to see. Say what?
Was he an offensive coach? I don't know. I don't know what he was. I thought he was just like, I'm just gonna delegate. I'm just kind of like a little overseer. Because that's
he was
the thing.
kind of considered that, but I think it's fair to say we're not quite sure exactly what he was, because
I don't think anyone knows.
He
even knows.
He was just one of those guys that I think was just kind of lucky to be on the Penn State football team and made the right connections and became a football coach. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
just an overseer, which is fine for a college head coach.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. To be determined a lot in terms of coaching, all that kind of stuff. Now, here's the thing. If the Panthers, again, it's so weird because right now they're currently sitting, as you and I have this conversation, as the 3rd pick in the draft.
Yeah.
Or somewhere around pick 3. They're only 2 games still out of first in the NFC South because of Atlanta 4-4. Had they won that game, they actually would be in first place in the NFC South, which is just bonkers to think about. So there's a lot of what ifs still to come. Who knows what they're going to do with Wilks? The guys like him. The guys play for him. They even mentioned how they feel like he got a bad shot in Arizona and didn't get a fair shake out there, and they want to play and do this for him, which says something, which I think does mean a lot. Still to be determined, is he a great NFL head coach? Again, because we only have the 1 year and plus these 3 games. So again, to be determined. But I do like the fact that he's actually going to get himself an opportunity. And you know what? It might not work in Carolina, but he can prove it for someone else, saying like, hey, you know what? That is a guy I think in our locker room can really bring something.
Also shows that people are behind PJ Walker as well. Hassan Reddick, who's now with the Eagles, played 1 year with the Carolina Panthers last year. Already on social media, making his comments like, hey, they should have been let him spin the ball.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting and very telling of what even the players see on the practice field. Wake Forest, unprecedented, 8 turnovers.
Yeah, that was weird.
Against Louisville.
That was weird.
It's like it was a complete meltdown. I don't think that's the type of game that's going to be indicative of the future at all, because when is that ever going to happen ever again?
I was
under Dave Clawson.
I was thinking, like, did Louisville get their playbook again?
I thought the same. I thought the same thing.
Okay, all right. You're not on the same page on this. Like, did at halftime, like, we just get like the playbook at halftime? Louisville's just going through that, because the second half was just wild. All those turnovers, like, no, that's just. Wake Forest only had 5 all season going into that game, so it was like, and you're Louisville. Louisville's okay, but Scott Satterfield, like, how did you know these plays were coming?
I think Satterfield, made a call into Tommy Elrod and was like, "Yo, I know you hooked up the last coaching staff. What you got for me, homie?"
Yeah, man.
How
much?
So that's something I was thinking as well. I was like, man, why is Wake Forest always so unlucky against Louisville? Wake Forest can go against, Clemson and Florida State, and in the last few years, I'm not as worried about that. I'm worried about the Louisville game.
Yeah.
Every year, just because I've seen it in person. I've seen it, since I've been covering this team, and for some reason, they just don't handle Louisville very well, no matter who's the coaching staff, no matter who knows the plays or who doesn't know the plays. But that's something that I thought was weird. But then you have another brilliant performance by Drake May. I was actually setting up watching that game with my mom on Saturday night, where Drake May was just, in the second half, just dealing, man. Like, my man, is already an NFL quarterback. I think already, if you place him in the middle for the Panthers right now, if you place him in, and he could start right now above Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield right now.
Yeah,
and the Panthers will be better off.
Yeah, probably. Now let's hope we're not running into like I don't think we are, but let's also not hope we're not doing like a Matt Barkley or Christian Hackenberg thing where like their first year starting like, oh, this guy #1 overall pick, and then
next year they lay an egg or something.
Well, they can't even make it into the league.
Yeah.
That's so I'm not saying that's going to be the case with Drake May, but I'm always cautious. Like, just because we have instant success doesn't mean that's projects long term. It's different. Yeah. Drake May is just that dude. So let's just call it what it is. He is that dude. And it's fun to watch him play. It's just, we can talk about all the stats and where they rank up nationally and all that stuff. Like, no, just sit back and watch the dude play. It's fun. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just a joy to watch that young man play football. And it's crazy to think that UNC might actually be the best team in the state of North Carolina this year. Wild to think about. No one would have thought that going into the season. A lot of people were thinking like it was NC State's year. Maybe Wake Forest, depending on who wins that game. But a lot of people think it was NC State. Right now, UNC still has to play Wake Forest and NC State, but UNC might be the best team in the state of North Carolina this year, which is something no one really projected to start the year.
Absolutely. I mean, it's especially if you just rank the ACC schools, people would have said NC State, Wake Forest, UNC, then Duke.
Yeah.
I mean, you could, speaking of NC State, you could almost make the argument that them and Duke are tied, right now, but that's another thing.
Well,
that's another subject.
That's also credit to Duke. Duke is
credit to Mike Elko for sure. Yeah. But getting back to Carolina, I still think that Wake Forest's roster, top to bottom, is better. But when you have the better quarterback, and I know you don't like this when people say this because it's too much credit on the quarterback, but it is an offensively driven game, especially with the way that the rules are. I think a lot of times if you have the better quarterback, you have probably a better chance to win. And Drake May, I did not expect him to be this good. I knew that he would be good because, you hear about him coming out of Myers Park and, you cover him from afar and you see what he's done there. But that's high school, right?
Oh, yeah.
You get to the ACC, that's completely different. And he's not only handled it, he's just looked like, dare I say it, better than what Sam Howell looked last year.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I would not disagree with you at all on that.
I mean, I will say that Drake May has a little bit more at his disposal than Sam Howell, but also it feels like Drake May uses what he has at his disposal better than Sam Howell did last year. Sam Howell, he couldn't make the throw or wasn't comfortable, he'd just run to get out.
Well, that was also a byproduct of when you lose 2 NFL running backs out of your backfield. Right. And 2 NFL wide receivers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a little bit of a byproduct of that because I will say some of the freshmen like Amari and Hampton, those guys actually helped the run game. But it was funny how in the second half, Mac Brown even said it a couple of days ago, like, he told the offensive staff, don't even think about running the ball. Like, we're doing too well throwing it. Like, they're stacking the box. Yeah. Throw the ball. Funny how it worked out.
Yeah. Drake May doing amazing. I will like to see what he does next year. Because also, if he has a really good year next year, he could leave and become a top pick in the NFL draft since he'd been in college for 3 years.
Who starts tanking for Drake May? Who's already starting
Well,
right now?
I was going to say, like,
What NFL team is tanking for him?
The NFL teams would absolutely love to have him. And then not only that, next year for the North Carolina Tar Heels, we talked about how they had all those expectations last year and didn't really live up to it. Think about the expectations and what it will be next year.
Oh,
Because a lot of the reasons they had the low expectations because they had a really young defense. And now you have a defense, they're going to have these 4 or 5-star guys that they were able to pull within the state of North Carolina who are going to be juniors and seniors who before were, freshmen and sophomores with all the top 10 expectations. Now these guys have been in the trenches. They've been through the fire. And, guys like Jahvari Ritzie and Travis Shaw, like already you can see them pop. In that pit game in the middle, causing some havoc in the middle of that defensive line. Imagine them next year as seniors and juniors. And then you have another year for Amarian Hampton. And then, if Downs decides to stay and all that, like Carolina, probably what they went through last year as far as the expectations, if they're going to have it next year, they probably would be able to handle it better next year.
yeah. And it's funny. It's funny how it's all flipping back and forth, right? It's all flipping back and forth because, like you said, 2021 NC State, 8-4 type season, performed a little bit better than that. UNC, like you just mentioned. So, it's going up and down. I guarantee you next season, expectations for NC State are not going to be very high.
No.
Especially if they have a new head coach.
Expectations might be high for Duke next year.
Oh, yeah. Expectations will be high for Duke next year going in.
Even if they do have a new head coach, I don't think NC State will be horrible, but yeah.
Yeah, expectations of which I don't know. My gut is telling me more and more. I'm not sure if you heard or saw what Dave Doran, NC State head football coach, did this weekend, but a social media post, a retweet over the weekend about I don't have the tweet directly in front of me, but to paraphrase, he retweeted a fan who said, if you're leaving these games early, you suck. Yeah. Stay to the end of the game. Like, this team's different, all those kinds of things. Well, he retweeted it, Dave Doran. Dave Doran, I don't care if people who put in their bio saying retweets don't equal endorsements. Let's be real, they kind of do.
I have that in my bio, but
I know you do,
so I don't get fired.
I know you do. I don't. Maybe I should. But nevertheless, like you can't retweet that stuff as a college coach and not be like,
That's
people
true.
Go, bro, what are you doing?
I mean, a retweet right now has Kyrie Irving in trouble.
Oh,
Exactly. So I feel you. I definitely feel you on that.
Oh yeah. Well, Kyrie's
That's
also
a whole
built himself
nother
a
thing,
reputation.
though.
Yeah, that's a whole other conversation. Yeah. But nevertheless, like, Dave, like, what are you doing? Then in this presser on Monday, he's like, I threw an experiment out there. I'm sorry I upset the Twitterverse, like literally throwing up the air quotes with that. I'm like, dude, what are we doing, Dave? Like, seriously, like what are we thinking we're gonna gain from this? Like, you got people buzzing, but not in a good way. I don't know. I'm not sure what his angle and his idea and stuff with it was, but nevertheless, I was like, man, it kind of feels like this dude's ready to head out. I'm not gonna lie. It kind of gives the feeling that like this guy's ready to leave.
Speaking of Halloween, I had a fun time. I know you were at the Carolina Hurricanes game.
I was. I
was
dressed
able-
as a mid-30s single guy who works in sports media. I was great. I nailed it. I nailed that costume, Chris. I guarantee I was so good at it, people didn't even think I was dressed up.
Oh man, that's hilarious.
It was great.
I was the ultimate dad on Halloween, and I loved it. Cooked for the family a little bit on the day, and then I was able to go trick or treating with my daughter. Like we did last year, and now that she's 5, she's starting to remember things. Like before last year, trick-or-treating was like, it was like the first time she had been trick-or-treating, even though it wasn't, but it was the first time she remembered it. And then now, like, she's able to stack those memories, and she's like, oh, okay, I remember this house had, this candy, and I remember this house had great decorations and stuff like that, which is cool to see. And of course, I had to put my newborn in a little outfit. She wasn't having it. I put some pictures out there. It's probably expired by now. By the time you're seeing this, because it's on my story. But she just wasn't having it. She was crying and everything, but it said my first Halloween on her shirt. But it was very cute to see. And she was a part of my Halloween costume. I wanted to do something with my newborn that I thought would be a pretty cool thing. So what can I do with a newborn? And I was trying to figure it out, and then one day it popped in my head. I remember when Michael Jackson dangled his baby over the balcony. I was like, I should just get a red button up like Michael Jackson in a wig and do that. And I didn't realize that people would find it so hilarious, but they found it hilarious, and I'm glad.
Oh yeah, I thought it was. Yeah, I thought it was well done. Well done. Well done. It was pretty spot on. I was like, wow, Chris actually looks pretty good with long hair. That's the thing I really took.
I've had long hair before.
Chris. Oh, you have?
Yeah, I used to have braids back when I was I started growing out my hair when I was 13, and then I cut my hair off when I was 17. But I used to have the long braids just to come down to here, and then so when it was out, I had the ludicrous look,
oh
crazy.
Wow, full on, okay,
yeah.
All right, I respect that.
It was my afro was so heavy it couldn't stand up anymore. It was just down and out. And
all right,
bushy.
Sideshow Bob,
just bushy out there. Yeah, loved it. Love that time.
I say bring it back.
I want to. I really do want to, but I'm over 30. I don't know how responsible that is. Also,
whatever, who cares?
I have this contract with WRL. You see the little bit of scruff on my face that is taking a week and a half to grow.
Yeah, that's
even right now, if I were to go back on air in WRL, I'd have to cut this off because it's not a part of my image. And then also I have my hairline receding just a little bit.
Oh, I think I got you beat on that, cuz.
So I don't want to be one of those guys with the long hair that it's thinning right here, and to me it just won't look good. So
okay, that's fair.
Yeah, but I would love to though.
I would say I would look good.
How was the Halloween experience watching the Carolina Hurricanes get a shootout win? They've been playing a little scary lately.
Yeah, I would say that they haven't been crisp lately. They haven't been crisp lately, but I think they're going to be fine because again, they have new guys and new places and different moving parts and such. Right. But you know what? A lot of people said last year how they were so good in October, they started off hot, then they just kind of fizzled off and all that, blah blah blah. Well, are you complaining because they don't have that hot 9-0 start or whatever that they had last year? I'm like, they're still winning games and banking points, and they're not even close to playing to their full potential. Right. Isn't this what you rather want? Them still winning and continuing to grow and bank points and all that stuff, and then as the season progresses, also grow and get better. Isn't that what you want to have? Playing your best going into the playoffs, not start off super hot and just be kind of above average the rest of the year. I'm sorry. What do you want, people? But it was a good time, nevertheless, at PNC Arena. Only the third home game this year for the Canes, which is just annoying.
They've played nine games?
Yeah, because they went on the road for 5 games, come back for 1, go back out on the road again. So, yeah, they're 9 games into the season, only 3 at home. But that means more home games at PNC Arena, which is going to be always a fun time at PNC. If you're ever at PNC Arena, let me know. Tweet at me at @TheFanRookie. I would love to say, hey, I'd love to come beat you. Okay. Yeah. Also, you can follow Chris at Chris Lea TV. Follow us at Culture State Pod. But also 99.9 The Fans YouTube page. Subscribe to that. I guess the people say smash the subscribe button.
Smash it.
Say hammer it. Boom.
Thank you guys so much for watching and listening to Culture State. Make sure you're listening to us Saturday mornings, 10 to noon. Yeah. The live show. You always get the chance to hear me rap. You get a chance to hear Dennis do his thug thizzle. And
that's out thug tier for all you people out there.
Yeah.
Then it's Cox and Chris Lea about to dig in the crate, so turn it up, cause it's time for the culture state. Yeah, we do it for the culture, home of the greats, in the Carolina hood from the culture state. Chris Lea and Dennis Cox about to dig in the crate. So turn it up, cause it's time for the culture state. Yeah.